Hello and welcome to Mosaic, Georgia's Caring and Courageous Conversations, where we hear amazing stories from survivors of sexual assault and child sexual abuse, where they can just connect with survivors and you can learn about what they've been through and how you can help yourself or others who may have experienced similar things. So my name is Miriam Jordan. I'm your host tonight. I also manage Mosaic, Georgia's education, training, and outreach programs. And I have our guest who I am privileged and honored to share this time with, Lanie George. She is our executive administrator here at Mosaic, Georgia, and she's going to just have a conversation tonight. We really appreciate you for being here tonight, Lanie, and having this important conversation with us.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Yes. So I just kind of wanted to jump in and just ask if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and why you wanted to have this conversation tonight.
Yeah, for sure. So I think we kind of said a little bit earlier.
Yes.
I'd love to take some of the shame away from sharing our stories.
Mm-hmm.
I know it's been shame that's kept me for the longest time sharing my story.
Mm-hmm.
I've since shared my story comfortably. But I really would love for others to know that their past doesn't define them and that there's a hope and a future on the other side of healing,
Mm-hmm.
and that those dark days don't last forever.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can in any way give somebody the courage to either just more comfortably share their story or not feel like they are consumed with shame because of what's happened to them. Because
Mm-hmm.
I truly believe that our value and worth isn't wrapped up in what's happened to us.
Correct.
Or even what we do, but
Mm-hmm.
it's innately who we are. I think
Right.
there's a value and dignity that we all hold.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's unfortunate when trauma or hurts have tried to steal that from us. So that's some of why I chose to share my story tonight.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. I know you and I have had, some time to talk about this, and I know a lot of what you experienced kind of goes back to your childhood. So could you share a little bit about your childhood, what your memories are?
Yeah, for sure. So I think it would be amiss if I didn't share a little bit about my mama's story.
Okay.
Because that's where I start. I started from my mama, as we all did.
That's right.
But I think it's important that we know that hurts left unattended can trickle down to the next generation, and mine definitely started that way. So I was born to a very young mama. My mom was 17 when she had me. And you'll hear me say the word in the life.
Okay.
For me, what I understand that is she came out of a life of what I now know as human trafficking. She had experienced a lot of sexual violence in her home.
Okay.
And so at the age of about 13 or 14, she actually ran away from her home because she felt like it was safer to be on the streets than to stay in the place where she was experiencing that.
Okay.
So you can imagine at 13, you can get out into the streets.
It's so scary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then what do you do? And so typical, she was quickly taken in by people who were going to take care of her. But in exchange, she had to perform sexual acts to, to survive.
Yeah.
And so she did that, and it wasn't too long before drugs were introduced. I'm not sure if drugs were introduced in a way to help her cope with what she was experiencing,
yes,
or if drugs were introduced to help keep her entrapped in the life that she was in. So that went on for a while. She ended up meeting my birth father, and she gave birth to me. So that happened at 17, and I think more than anything, she just wanted to be a mama.
Yeah.
And she wanted to take care of me. So she got out of the life at that time. She had me, and life was good for a while. And within a few years, unfortunately, my birth father was not the best of men, and he ended up in jail. And so now my mom, puts her at 19, is now she actually has 2 kids. I have a birth brother too.
Okay.
And so she's left to care for the 2 of us. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, having been out in the streets from the age of 13, she didn't have life skills of what to do and how to now care for 2 kids.
Yeah.
So she went back to what she knew. And
Okay.
so she ended up back in the life. So that meant me and my brother ended up being placed into foster care.
Okay.
So,
And could I just stop you there? Like, I just want to make sure our viewers and listeners know what you mean when you say the life. Could you explain that a little bit more?
So the life would be basically the sex industry, or for her and for part of my story, it means exchanging sex for something of value. It may be, you'll hear people often say turning a trick, which means somebody is propositioning you for sex in exchange of either money or something of value. So sometimes it was just a place to stay. Sometimes it may have just been exchanging sex to be fed, you know. So that was the life. And it could be a bunch of different things. It could be selling yourself online, to being sold online, to working the strip. I don't know if we use that term anymore, but working the strip in my days, I'm a little bit older, would be walking the street until somebody propositions you. So,
okay. And it sounds like a very similar definition to human trafficking as well.
So human trafficking would be defined as force, fraud, or coercion used for the purpose of someone, a sex or a sex act in exchange of something of value.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for defining those terms for us.
Yeah, and I think it's important because I think there's a bunch of myths to it, you know, whether you're being kidnapped and, you know.
Exactly.
I know for the longest time I thought it just happened overseas and whatnot. And I'll say I didn't understand a lot of those terms until I was much older. But so, ended up in foster care, and so I was in foster care at that point. So my story goes back and forth in foster care, but I was in foster care between 2 and 7. I was separated from my birth brother. So in that time, I know my mom just wanted to get back to her kiddos. So she ended up meeting another gentleman, and I think looking back, it was for the purpose of getting us out of foster care. So we were placed out of foster care at 7, to which I was thrilled. You know, I just, as any little girl, wanted to be with my mama. I wish that my story of harm happened a little bit later. It actually happened previously, before getting out of foster care. Some of my sexual assault happened while I was in foster care in that beginning years, which quickly taught me to just be quiet and that I couldn't speak up and share what was happening to me. So I was out of foster care, and now I'm with my mama, and I was tickled, you know, again, just wanted to belong. I think typical of your kids who are in foster care, kind of some of those abandonment issues were there. And I remember a lot of just being grateful that I had a sense of I belong, you know?
Yes.
And so life was good. And but again, my mom, just different circumstances, ended up going back to the life. She and the man that she married, they ended up separating, and she went back to what she knew, which was at that point working in the strip clubs.
Okay.
And so I was living back and forth with my birth mom and her different boyfriends. And so that's where it was reintroduced, the life.
Yeah.
And so at about 10 years old, I remember, and this is where I start remembering more of my story, I would go to work with my mom. So going to work with my mom meant going to the strip club.
Okay.
So I would remember going to school, and for me, school was a safe place. it was a place where the harm and stuff didn't happen to me.
Right.
But I remember part of the time, like one of the strip clubs that my mom worked at, my school bus would drop me off at my mom's strip club.
Okay.
Now, in my school's defense, there was a trailer park right behind the strip club.
Yes.
I didn't pay attention to that at the time.
Yeah.
I just assumed everybody knew that I was being dropped off at the strip club.
Okay. Yeah.
And I remember feeling a bunch of shame. I knew it was wrong in the sense that I felt uncomfortable. And I remember not wanting the kids on the school bus to know that my mom worked there. There was still that sense that that was my mom, and I didn't want anybody to think differently of her.
Yeah.
Because I definitely saw her for who she was and not for what she did.
Yes.
And I just wanted everybody else to see that.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want the kids on the school bus to know. And I definitely didn't want them to know that I was going into the strip club. So I remember the school bus would drop me off, and I would hesitate to get off the school bus. And I would walk near the entrance to the strip club, and I would just wait. And I would wait for the school bus to leave.
Right. Yeah.
Thinking that they wouldn't notice that I was going into the strip club.
Yeah.
And so the school bus would leave. I would then go into the strip club. And the way this strip club is the strip, or where the stage was here. And then there was kind of like a bar and a food. They kind of sold like bar food there. And so I would get off the school bus, and I would go to the strip club owner, and I would get up to the bar and get fed. And I remember that they were taking care of me while my mom worked.
Okay.
It was communicated very clearly that if anybody touched my mom's little girl,
right,
that somebody would get hurt. So I would hear those things over and over in my head.
Yeah.
And so that's important to know as far as why I didn't end up saying something.
Right.
But, and I think it's also important to understand that as awful as what was happening there was a sense that they were meeting a need there. They were providing something to me. We were definitely lived very poor. There were many times that we lived either at the strip club or the different bars or different places that my mom worked. So to be fed and to get whatever I wanted at the strip club was like, this is awesome.
Yeah, yeah.
And then that's also when the different men at the strip club would then help me with my homework and different things like that. And then it was after that, you know, I was asked to do a lot of the things I would see my mom do, or the different things that the other women in the strip club would do. And so that's where some of that sexual violence, and I've now since learned trafficking.
Right.
You know, while I didn't necessarily see the money exchanged, I'm well aware that, you know, these men were exchanging money for, you know, a 10-year-old to
things.
perform.
Okay, I was going to ask how old you were. 10 years old.
About
Wow.
10 years old.
Wow.
To perform these different acts.
Yeah.
So that was there at the strip club. And then there was many other different strip clubs and different boyfriends and whatnot that came in and out. And, you know, there were times that while I didn't have to perform, where during the summers, again, now I've got a single mom who's trying to take care of, she just had me at that time, take care of a little girl. So during the summers, she would do truck stop trips with different men.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so, and I'm not sure if this still goes on. I'm sure it does.
I
know
think
it did
does,
a couple years ago when I was working in this field.
Yeah.
Where you would drive with the semi trucks and then stop at truck stops. And then, again, gratefully, I think because my mom knew, you know, and she didn't want anything bad to happen to me, I would stay in the trucks, and then she would go inside the truck stops and exchange different things there. So that went on for a while.
Yeah.
So this was between 10 and 12. And so at 12, I remember we were staying in a house with a bunch of different people, and my mom had come home late from work, and I remember we were in a small room enough for just a bed, and so she had brought home a trick, and so she kicked me out, and they did what they do. And I remember it was the night before Mother's Day, and I basically had told my mom, who was probably drunk and high at the time, that I had wished she didn't bring this person home. Needless to say, at 12, she then kicked me out. So at 12, I was kicked out to the streets. And so it could have easily been the same story that perpetuated my mom, her story again. But I was placed back into foster care at that point. And this was that thing that I absolutely did not want. Because in my mind, while I knew what was going on was wrong, I was still with my mom. And that seemed better than going into foster care. So back into foster care, great family took me in. They had a daughter of their own as well. And I remember being there, and they actually took in somebody to live there. So they had an older man, come and live there. And while he lived there, he began to come in late at night. And began to then rape me continually over and over again. And I remember at this point feeling like even if I said something, it wouldn't matter. I didn't really believe that anybody would have listened to me. And then I think there was another fear that if they did hear me, then where do I go? Do I end up back in a different home? Or, so at now 13, 14 years old, I was like, it's better just to keep my mouth shut and let this continue.
So you felt pretty powerless and just like there was nothing you could do and no one to turn to.
No one to turn to. And I think it's important to know that my voice was gone, but it didn't happen necessarily in that foster home, and it didn't necessarily happen at the strip club. It started when I was 3 and that first sexual assault happened to me, and I think for every time we experience these sexual assaults, that voice gets stuffed down and quieted to the point that I'm now 15, 16 years old, and I'm like, I don't have a voice, And
it was stolen from you at a very young age.
I was led to believe that, and I also was afraid to say anything because I knew, or at least I believed how I thought society viewed my mom. I saw and heard the things that they would say about her, and I couldn't differentiate if they saw her and said the different things that they said about her, how I was any different at 10, 12, 16 years old. I was doing the same things as my mama was doing, and I heard the things that people said about her and the words that we used as a community. I didn't see our community as a safe place to say something
because they allowed it to happen. There was no intervention.
Nobody stepped in. I mean, I often thought, why didn't anybody say or do something? Now, I will say I was one of those people who put a smile on. I didn't want people to know what was going on. I didn't make friends because I was afraid that if I had friends, they would kind of know more of what was going on. So if I was the good little girl and just smiled, then nobody would say anything. So that went on for a while. And I think something happened as I got a little bit older, started working and becoming a little independent. I was like, I'm going to say something. And so I told my foster parents that this gentleman was coming in late at night, and I wasn't brave enough to say what was really happening.
Yeah.
But I was brave enough to go, he's coming in and talking to me late at night.
Right.
And the response I got was, he lied and said he wasn't coming late at night and talking to me, which he wasn't.
Right.
And so then I was punished for lying. So I, at that moment, said I would never speak again what would happen to me.
Yeah.
But I also began the process of going, I need to get out of here.
Yeah. You knew something was wrong and had to change
at
that point.
Yeah. So at 17, I had saved up enough money that I had moved out, and I would tell you that I got out of the life, but I definitely wasn't free. I think the only thing that changed at 17, I had my own place, my own car, graduated high school, living on my own. The only thing that changed was the acts weren't happening to me. Right. But the bondage to the trauma and the hurt were still there. A
lot of guilt and shame probably that you had to overcome.
Yeah. And I really thought that if I just didn't say anything about it, it wasn't happening anymore, that everything was going to be okay. Right. And so I ended up met my husband at 18. Amazing guy. He loved me for who I was. Again, have not shared any of my story with him dating or any of that. I think he knew some of the abandonment issues I had and some of the struggles I had with trusting people, but definitely not the sexual stuff that had happened to me. Right. We ended up starting to have our family. We, at this point, had 3 kids, and from the outside, life looked perfect, but inside I was dying. Yeah. The shame of trying to hold all of that in, the shame of not wanting to share my story, the shame of just feeling dirty. Like there was always this sense of I was dirty, or I didn't feel like my value and worth was the same as those around us. Yeah. Because I knew what had happened to me. Right. And I just knew that if I shared any of it or spilled any of it out accidentally, that either the feelings would consume me or that those that I loved so dearly would leave me. And my husband gave me no reason to believe that. I had an amazing group of people. But again, I was literally dying from the inside out. Yeah.
Well, one thing I just wanted to pick up when you mentioned the part, when you were as a young child in the strip club, and just that whole grooming process that adults do with children to gain their trust. And it's, things may not even be violent, may not seem like it's forced, but when you're giving people meals and gifts and things like that, then, you think, oh, someone's just being nice to me. So, as a young child, you can't ward that off. I mean, you're just like, oh, this adult is doing these nice things to me. So, I'll do things for them. And then just by being in that environment, it was, I think it was impossible at that time for you to have a different experience, without a true rescue. Yeah. Yeah.
And it didn't start with the actual,
of course,
the rapes and the sexual assault. Right. It started from touching where they shouldn't have touched. Right. And saying I was beautiful. Yes. And comments that they shouldn't have been making to a young girl. Right. Of course. And so I think that's really good to know that it was slowly desensitizing me to some of their behaviors that should have been known as wrong. Right. But it was never taught to me that this was wrong. Yes. It was never taught to me that it's okay to say that something is not okay that's happening. Like I was always communicated that you're supposed to do what your adults are telling you to do. And so, it was definitely a grooming. And same for when I was in the last foster home, the person that was there that did these acts to me, he preyed on my vulnerabilities, because while they had a birth daughter there, he never propositioned her once. Oh, that's interesting. We were there. Yeah. He knew who he could prey upon. He knew that I wouldn't say anything. Yeah. he knew that she was comfortable
Yes.
talking to her parents,
Mm-hmm.
and that if she said something, they weren't going to kick her out. They
Yeah.
weren't,
Right.
And I don't know that they would have,
Mm-hmm.
but he led me to believe that if I did,
Mm-hmm.
that I wouldn't have a place
Yeah.
to stay.
Mm-hmm.
So and he knew I wouldn't say anything. And it went on for quite a few years
Mm-hmm.
before finally.
Yeah.
And interestingly, it ended when my foster sister came into my room late at night.
Mm-hmm.
And she did speak up for me.
Right.
And so it was in her speaking up that he left.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking, some of the clients we serve here at Mosaic are, we see them more than once.
Mm-hmm.
And so oftentimes when someone is victimized, they'll be re-victimized. So what you experience, unfortunately, is not uncommon, and people can see that and sense those vulnerabilities and really take advantage of that. So
yeah, I would often tell people it was vulnerability that got me into the life or had those things happen to me.
Right.
But it's shame that kept
you, right? Yeah.
And I think as a community, if we could do better of taking that shame off, talking more freely, where it's not such a hush-hush thing,
right?
I think we could have a positive impact on the other Lanies out there, the other little girls.
Yes. Well, I want to kind of shift gears a little bit here and I can't remember if I said this at the beginning, but if I did not, we are going to be taking questions and comments in the comment section of the chat. So please feel free to put those in there. And one of my colleagues will be letting me know what those are towards the end of our conversation, and we'll get to your questions. So please add those in. I wanted to kind of shift gears to where you are now. I see a lovely lady sitting with me, and so clearly you have overcome your childhood and what happened to you in the past. So what has been going on the last few years, and what are you doing now in your healing journey?
Yeah. So it is a journey.
Yes, that's right.
Continually working on our journey.
Correct.
Of healing. Yeah. But it took a while before I spoke something. It wasn't until probably my 30s I got into the place I absolutely hated my life. Had no reason. Well, now I know, but outwardly looking, you would think that I had no reason to hate my life. It was at the second attempt to take my life that I said, I need to do something.
Okay.
So it was at the encouraging of my husband to start counseling. And so I did, which I wish I had had the courage sooner to have done that. But I didn't, and that's okay. And I think it's important to know we come to that place of bravery to get the help that we need.
Right.
All on our, we're all different when we get that help. And I think it took me knowing that I needed to be the one to initiate that, because everybody else was telling me what I needed to do.
Right.
So I did. I started counseling. And at this point, I was just addressing what I thought was sexual abuse. And had counseling. I was introduced to new coping skills and new self-care skills. And it was the beginning of my journey in healing. So I started that at about 30. As I started knowing, wow, this is what walking in freedom can look like.
Right.
I kind of liked it, and then I also wanted my mama to have that same moment of healing, or at least have the same opportunity that I had. Because more than anything, I wanted my mom to know that who she was worth being loved, who she was worth being cared for. Same things that I had now learned.
Right. Yeah.
So I actually had the great privilege of going back and helping my mom, who at 47 was still working at that same strip club that I talked about earlier.
Yeah.
I had been reaching out to her. I haven't had my daughter yet, but I had our 3 boys. And my mama, more than anything, she just wanted to nurture and care. She missed that opportunity with me just because of the harms and hurts. So I would get to call her and tell her about the boys. And so I remember calling her and going, Mom, you can get out. If you want out of this, we'll help you get out. And it took quite a few of those conversations before I think she had the bravery. But I remember calling her one time. I'm like, Mama, if you want out, we'll come and get you. At this point, so my trauma all happened in North Carolina, or I'm sorry, in Florida.
Okay.
And I had then moved to North Carolina.
Okay.
So I remember calling her and she goes, I think I'm ready. And I'm like, I ain't giving her another second.
Right, right.
My husband and I,
Go straight.
we took that 8-10 hour trip
Wow.
down to Florida. And I remember going to that same strip club and everything kind of, you know, flooded back. But this time I went in with my own bravery and my own, you're not taking this away from me,
right?
And you're not taking it from my mama.
Yeah.
And so I walked into that strip club, went straight back to the dressing room, and I didn't even give her a chance. I'm like, we're going. And we packed up her stuff. And that night we drove right back to North Carolina.
That's amazing.
And so then got to walk alongside her journey of healing.
Yeah.
And that was a sweet gift.
So do you realize what you did? You broke the cycle.
I know.
You broke the cycle. That's quite a triumph and just so amazing.
Yeah. And I now have a daughter, and because of the gift that I got, and she won't have to experience, you know, what I went through.
Right.
And I think that's important to know, that when we help somebody break that cycle,
yes, we
can stop it from the next generation and the next generation.
That's right.
Just like trauma had me believe that it would never end, the truth is that healing can also be given to the next generation as well. So yeah, I totally see that as a gift. Yeah. And then I had the great privilege of in 2012, we actually started a home for women who were sexually trafficked.
Oh, wow. That's wonderful. Yeah. Yeah. And you did that in North Carolina.
So that was in North Carolina too. And so we helped close to 200 women get out of the life of human trafficking. So we helped women over the age of 18 who had both substance abuse and trafficking in their story, and helped them just on their journey of healing. And so just a safe place to be, a safe community, and provided different services that they need to walk in that same freedom.
Oh, that's amazing. And so did you find that for you having that safe house for those women as aiding you in your own healing journey?
For sure.
Yeah.
You know, I do think that we're set free to help set other people free. I loved that I could sit across the table from another person and go, I know it's hard. I know it's difficult. Right. But I also know that the hard work it takes is worth it. And that there's something on the other side. Yeah. And, you know, you may not be brave enough right now. Yeah. But we're going to walk alongside you and just hold your hand and be in the mess, be in the yuck, love them where they're at to see them. Because I believe everybody is worth that. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for that, for serving those women in that community. I mean, it's just so amazing that you were able to, you know, get your counseling and get yourself to a healthy place where you could help others. Yeah. I really admire that. And I'm just honored to know you, and it's just a miracle that you are who you are today. Yeah. After all that you've been through. Really, really, truly. I do want to ask if you could just share a little bit more with us, other things maybe other than counseling, those people who may have experienced sexual assault or child sexual abuse in their past. Yeah. What else might they be able to do that would aid them in healing, like any sort of art or movement therapy or anything, journaling? I know that there's all types of different things you may be able to do. Yeah. Journaling's fabulous. I would encourage people to have 2 journals. Yes. That journal where you're free to write whatever you want, the dirty, the ugly, the right. Be able to know that that's a free place to just get it all out. The kind that if you had to burn it, it would be okay. Right. Yes. Yes. And then I think another journal of just kind of reframing things, because even in the worst of times, there was something good, you know, whether it was today, the sun, you know, came up and it was a beautiful sunrise. Yeah. Some people will call it a grateful journal, but I think sometimes when you're in the really hard part, it's hard to call things grateful. Yes. But hopefully one day you'll get to the place that you can call that a grateful journal. Right. I do think art, I didn't know that I was artistic until, you know, being encouraged to use art as a way to get some of my thoughts out. And I think it's important to write down things that you enjoy or you remember in the past that you enjoyed doing, and doing some of those things, whether it's being physical, being active. I do think there's plenty of support groups that are at no cost that people can go to. But I think just slowly finding a safe person that you can talk to. And I would also encourage not to talk to just everybody.
Yes. Find those trusted people, right?
Trusted people. Yes. I still have my trusted people that I go to.
Yeah.
So I think those are some ways that you can, start that journey of healing. But I would say just start with something, and don't buy into the lie that you're not worth it. Or don't buy into the lie that the shame is going to consume you, because it's scary.
Right.
But I will say the journey of healing is a whole lot easier than the trauma and the things that had happened to me.
Right.
And I think each time that you do something brave and see that it didn't kill you, it didn't consume you, you get a little bit stronger the next time to do the next step. And I do think it's incremental. Is that the right word?
Yes.
It builds upon itself.
That's right.
That bravery, so you can get to the place that you can, maybe seek out counseling, or, find someone that's been there and done that. And we all know that we are, as women, 1 in 4, I think is the statistic, experience sexual assault or violence in their life.
Yeah, so, it's really more like 1 in 3 women, 1 in 6 men, and about half of all transgender people. So
we're not alone. And I think the lie is that we are alone, and we're definitely, for me, I had met Jesus as a person, so there was a personal relationship. So I think faith was something that was at no cost, and that was helpful for me. So those are some of those.
I'm glad you said that, because we can tap into our faith and our spirituality into a higher power that can kind of help us cope. So for folks who believe in those things, I encourage that as well. So thank you so much for sharing that.
For sure.
Yeah.
And then I think as a community, we need to come around alongside people and be a safe voice and a safe place for them. Because like I said, now I know what I know. And if I saw a 10-year-old little girl walking into a strip club, my happy hiney's getting on the phone.
We're going to call someone who can intervene, right?
And so by people not intervening, told me that people weren't going to. And that's what I'd love for us to see as a community, that we change and be better, that, we be their brave until they are brave. So,
yeah. That's why hopefully this conversation's definitely important, but it, just educating people on what to look for. And as they say, see something, say something, right? Don't keep it quiet. If something looks strange, it probably is. And, it should be reported.
I'd rather you be wrong 100% of the time.
Exactly.
And have called 100 times.
Yes.
To been right that one time and not said anything.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I mean, I know we've chatted before. You are about your story, and it's very touching and moving to me. I've heard it a few times, so I'm not as reactive, as hopefully the audience doesn't find me cold, because I've heard a lot of this before, but it really is a great impact. And just the fact that you are so strong and can share what happened and let people know that it's not their fault, and that things can change, and you can have a life of hope, and healing. So I appreciate that. I think we're going to switch gears and check in just to see if we have any questions or comments right now. So I will ask Susan just if any questions have come in as we've been talking.
We have one question right now from Esther. She said, what suggestions do you have to make it safer for survivors to come?
Okay. I'll let you take that, Lanie, if you would.
I think the first thing is, when someone does come to you, obviously I'm going to say be empathetic, but I'm going to say be empathetic without a ton of emotions, meaning the, oh my gosh.
Right.
Or I can't believe that happened to you, which that is our way of going, I'm so sorry, you
Yes,
know.
yes.
But what I would have heard was, oh, you don't believe what I have to say.
Yeah.
So empathetic would be one without that overly, I might not have all the right words for that.
Not a lot of questioning and just kind of believing what they're saying and patient and listening.
Yeah. Believing, believe.
Yes.
And understand that it takes a lot of courage. They're not going to likely be as forward. Some might be forward in sharing their story, but they're likely going to give you a little glimpse to see what your response is. Like, am I safe enough that if I give you this little nugget, that you're not going to freak out? Or if I give you this little nugget, are you going to believe me?
Yeah.
So believe their story. And then I also think the other thing is to know that they've just trusted you with their story and that their story is their story to share and not yours.
Right.
Because if you want to lose somebody's trust quickly, it would be to share their story without, let them share their story.
Right.
And then offer, hey, if you want to get help, I'll walk alongside you. Or I don't know where to find help, but I will help you find the help that you need.
Right.
So I think those would be some of the things that I would.
That's great. Thank you. Susan, were there any other questions? Anything else?
Not at the moment.
Okay.
Gary Coleman just said, I love you, my sweet friend, my hero.
Oh, we've got some friends and family watching, hopefully. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's fine. So I do want to kind of piggyback on some things that you said before around healing, because, you know, here at Mosaic, Georgia, we have a wholeness collective and we offer a lot of that. We definitely have trauma-informed care here, as you know, offering yoga, sound therapy, music therapy, art therapy through our wholeness collective. So just hearing about what you've been through and the things that helped you along the way, we're also trying to do those things here with our survivors as well.
Which is what attracted me.
Yes.
One of the things that attracted me to Mosaic is that we do care for the whole person.
Yes.
I do love that Mosaic lets the survivor do it at their pace.
Yes.
And I think that's another thing that I would say is I wouldn't, even if you see all the signs that someone's being trafficked or even has been sexually assaulted, don't I self-identify for them.
Right.
That's something that, because on my journey, I didn't share this, but I didn't even identify having been trafficked until I was working for a human trafficking organization at almost 30-something years old.
Right.
So, I think it's important that we let them do that. And so I admire that we do that here at Mosaic. But yeah, there's resources out there.
Yeah.
And so we can, I mean, we're an amazing place. I'm slightly biased, but I love the work that we do here.
Yeah. We're able to have that acute response right after something happens, all the way to providing someone with the counseling and support groups and things like that they may need for further healing down the line. So, yeah. So Susan, I'm taking cues from you. No more questions or comments? Okay. All right. Okay. Well, was there any final thoughts that you'd like to share in this conversation or directly to viewers that we haven't covered today?
I mean, I think we've said it, you know, as far as don't buy into the lie that you're not worth it.
Right.
You know, I think every life holds value and worth.
Yes.
I now know that I hold great value and worth.
You do.
I know that I'm loved, not because I've done something or what, I'm loved for who I am. And that's good enough.
Yeah.
And just, I think you said it too. It's unfortunate that harm happens to us, that these sexual acts happen to us. But that our story doesn't have to end there.
That's right.
And dang it, don't let that person who's done that harm keep you trapped any longer. Please reach out to somebody. You are braver than you think you are.
Yeah.
And it is so worth the journey to go from a place of complete hopelessness and place of not feeling your value and worth, and then to come on the other side and go, oh, I'm okay.
Yeah.
There's still bad days and there's still rough days.
That's
and,
right.
Those lies still creep up,
Mm-hmm.
but you now have the tools
Mm-hmm.
to either counter those lies or hopefully even told some truths that you can kind of squash those lies as soon as they pop up. And
That's
with
right.
The truth.
Yeah. Yeah. Those are great
Yeah.
parting words, I would say. But I think just people just need to know that what happened to them is not their fault,
Mm-hmm.
and that they are loved and supported, and they just have to tap into those resources. So,
Sure.
yeah,
Sure.
yeah. Well, I thank you again so much, Lanie, George.
Yeah.
It's just been a privilege and an honor to have you with us, and thank you for continuing to be strong and to share your survival story. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. So I just did want to say thanks everyone for joining us tonight as we wrap up Sexual Assault Awareness Month and Child Abuse Prevention Month. We do want to let you know that Mosaic Georgia is a resource for you. We do have a 24-hour crisis line that I'll have one of our Facebook administrators put in, but it's 866-900-6019, and we'll put that in the comment section for you. Our website is mosaicgeorgia.org. And if you or someone that you know has experienced any sexual assault or child sexual abuse, just know that we are a resource for you, and that we are here to help 24/7 on our crisis line. Thanks for joining us for another installment of Caring and Courageous Conversations, and we will see you next time. Thanks so much, everybody.